The story that I am about to tell you is difficult to believe. It is a tale passed down through my family for ages. A tale of sadness, hope, and magic. But only magic can turn sadness into hope. It is an old story, shared from father to son for more generations than I can count. And now, the story belongs to me. A story I feel should finally be shared regardless of whether you believe it or not.
The Burden Stone, written and performed by Joshua Mindemann.
Many years ago, in a small village in southern Germany nestled into the foothills of the Alps, there lived a young stone carver. He was well renowned in the region for his skill. Not unlike a certain Italian with a much more famous name, the young stone carver had the keen ability to see a figure inside the stone and coax it out. But his sculptures, beautiful as they were, did not put food on the table. Instead, he made a modest living as a stonemason, building bridges, homes, and other such useful structures. He did not own the biggest house or the most land. His clothes were not the finest, and his possessions were not extravagant. None of this, however, prevented him from catching the eye of a beautiful young woman. As is the case with young love, they became inseparable. You've heard this story before. Suffice it to say, their love was as strong as the stones carved by the young man and as vast as the mighty mountains that surrounded them. They married, lived happily in his humble home, and before long were expecting a child, which is how these things go. Mind you, this was a long time ago, before the convenience of modern hospitals, and the pregnancy was difficult for the young woman. Many nights the young man remained awake, tending to his beloved and praying for the safety of his child. The months passed, and the time came. I'm sure the young stone carver was beside himself with anticipation as he awaited news. Undoubtedly, his heart must have burst with joy when he heard the first cries of his child, and the midwife emerged from the birthing room to announce that he had a son. But the day was not to be one of joy. Just as quickly as his heart had filled with happiness, it was torn apart when the midwife told him of his cherished wife's passing. These things were more common then, but it did not lessen the anguish of the young man. In one moment he had felt his emotions both soar to the highest peaks and plummet to the lowest depths. Tormented with the agony of the loss, he went off into the mountains. Many feared he would not return. For several days he trekked, wandering aimlessly, not sure where he was going, until at last he found himself in a small clearing. It was serene. A grassy hill burrowed between two monumental rocky peaks. A small stream trickled down from the snow above, bringing life to the little valley. The stone carver set to work. He didn't know what drove him or why, but in his solitude, in his sadness, he turned to the one thing that he knew best. He carved. For days and nights without sleep or sustenance, he chiseled away at the base of one of the stony crests. When at last he finished, before him was a fountain, fed by the waters running down the mountain, and in the center of the fountain was the most beautiful sculpture he had ever created. A beautiful young woman, graceful, poised, and filled with life. The likeness of his wife was so absolutely perfect that it appeared she herself stood there, frozen in stone. The young carver knelt by the edge of the fountain and wept, and as he poured out his pain, an interesting thing happened. The statue appeared to cry as well. Perhaps it was just the water falling from the mountain. Perhaps it truly was his wife longing to be back with him. Either way, the man watched as the apparent tears rolled down the face of the sculpture and dropped into the pool at her feet. He peered into the pool and saw a tiny pebble, as if a single teardrop had hardened as it fell. He picked up the tiny stone and wrapped it carefully, along with the few tools that he had brought with him. He kept it close. Somehow, it comforted him. His task complete, the young man returned to his village and to his son. The loss of his wife still weighed heavily on his soul, but he found a way to carry on. Years passed, and on particularly painful nights, when his aching heart weighed heavily on him, he would take out the small rock and whisper his worries to it. Each time he felt better. It was as if the rock would take some of his burden and help him bear it. Life moved on, and the stone carver grew old. Eventually his melancholy lessened. He watched his son grow into a fine man. Pride replaced pain, and soon there came a day when he felt he could bear his own burdens, so he passed the stone on to his son in hopes that it would likewise ease his struggles. Along with the stone, he shared the story of its origin, and so the stone and the story has continued to pass from father to son for years and years, from generation to generation until, most recently, it was passed to me. You may not believe this stone is magic, and I don't blame you, but something incredible has happened over the years. Usually, as a stone is handled, it becomes smaller. Years of touching the stone wears away the surface bit by bit, polishing it. But not this stone. The burden stone, as my father calls it, grows. With each worry whispered to the rock, it grows bigger, however imperceptibly. It takes on the weight of our worries, of our struggles, of our fears and concerns. It takes them from us. It may not look that large, a simple stone roughly the size of the palm of your hand, but ask yourself this: what is the weight of a worry?
Seems like forever since we've been together. Oh God, I miss you bad, and I reach your love. It's been so long, I know, but I'm finally coming home. Till then I'm dreaming of your heart, your eyes, our love. Your heart, your eyes, our love.